Hey everybody, it's Randy Ray at the Literate Texan, and today I'm celebrating 500 subscribers, and as you can see I have a special guest here. Most people know I used to own a bookstore. I met Forrest Jackson when I owned my bookstore because he was the local rare book dealer of choice in Dallas at the time. So he's got all kinds of cool stuff to show us today, and for once you're not going to have to listen to me talk constantly.
Well, we'll be conversing.
Well, yeah, I'm sure I'll have something to say. Steve Donahue says I'm an old bag of hot air, so, but he is too.
Yeah, well, you and I are the same age, so we're both old.
Right.
Bags of hot air.
So.
Yeah. I used to have an antiquarian bookstore in University Park, but we closed it down at the beginning of the year. And I teach a bookbinding class at the Craft Guild of Dallas, and that's a lot of fun. And I read almost every morning. I like to do my readings in the morning when I just have coffee and I'm most aware. And
I do that too. I read every morning before I start my work day.
I've usually got like 6 or 7 books going at once, and I never seem to finish anything. But
right.
You also know how that is.
Yeah.
But this is the book that I most recently finished. I was very much looking forward to this one. Data Baby, My Life in a Psychological Experiment by Susanna Breslin. And it says on the back here, what if your parents turn you into a human lab rat when you're a child? Will that change the story of your life? Will that change who you are? So Susanna Breslin, at birth, her parents started to enroll her in a longitudinal psychological study. They studied hundreds of children in the Bay Area, and they followed them for about 30 years with questionnaires. And they, when they were small children, they would observe the kids through, observation area. And I learned something that the definition of a one-way mirror is the same as the definition of a two-way mirror. Those mean the same thing.
Huh.
Yeah. So at some point in her childhood, she realized that she was being observed, and she just wondered to what extent this changed her life. Now, I became aware of her through this book called "You're a Bad Man, Aren't You?" And here's a very sexy picture of Susanna Breslin. Let me see if I can do that.
Ooh la la.
Yeah. And so this is short stories, and I was just fascinated by her really unique voice, truly unique voice in these short stories. So that's why I was so excited to read her book, Data Baby. It's coming out in November.
It's on my TBR.
TBR
to be read.
To be read, okay. Yeah, and so I did enjoy it. There was only one really weird element to it, and that's the way that she imagined, let's just say, the results of her health crisis. I don't want to give anything away, but obviously she survived it, and so that's not a spoiler. And so it was not as strange as her fiction was. And I'm not saying that her fiction is weird fiction in the supernatural way that you and I like, but it was just very different. I recommend it. And so that's what I finished most recently. Also, another memoir, a guy I discovered on YouTube, who goes by the name of 42nd Street Pete.
Huh.
And it's called...
That's a title.
A Whole Bag of Crazy, Sordid Tales of Hookers, Weed, and Grindhouse Movies.
That's a subtitle.
Yeah, and I bought it because of the Grindhouse movies. He was there in Times Square in the 1970s and 80s when it was real sleazy and raunchy. And
those were the days.
Yeah, and so it was good. I'm glad I read it. He could have used an editor. But it's fun to buy a book directly from the author because you can get it autographed. So I finished that this summer, and I liked it.
So these are, so far, all memoirs.
Yeah, memoirs, except for the short stories. And
right.
Here's a real immediate classic of a memoir, Yours Cruelly by Elvira.
I just got my copy of that in the mail yesterday.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Of course, it's funny. There's a few things that are surprising in it, but there's about a laugh per page. And then, I learned some things about her that, that was beyond the Elvira character. And like one of the things that I learned was that when she was a baby or a small toddler or something, she spilled some boiling water on herself. So she's got like burn scars on her beautiful body that she had to powder. And she was a teenage virgin go-go dancer in the late 60s, I think is what it was. And then so she was really smart because she went to Italy and taught herself Italian essentially. But you know, there's a lot of trials and tribulations in here too. And one of the smarter things that she did was making sure that she had the legal rights to the character of Elvira when they were about to, the format was changing on the TV station in Los Angeles.
I've heard nothing but good things about this book.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing it recommended repeatedly.
Yeah.
I think Floss was the first one to suggest it. So.
Well, and then
one of my imaginary booktube friends.
So I
she thinks she's real.
Collect autographed books, so I got to buy this one. Cassandra Peterson.
My copy's
That's
not
her name.
in nearly that good a shape.
Here's one that I wish was autographed. A memoir, What is Anything by S.T. Joshi. And I really enjoyed reading this about his scholarship called Memoirs of a Life in Lovecraft. And to those of you who don't know out there, he is the world expert on H.P. Lovecraft, no doubt.
Michael K. Vaughan will be happy to know that we mentioned H.P. Lovecraft and S.T. Joshi.
S.T. Joshi. I have a joke about S.T. Joshi. How is it that he's an atheist when we all think he's a god? Because he's done so much. And here's another unique book, with a unique voice. On Time, A Princely Life in Funk by Morris Day.
Morris Day.
And he does have a co-author here, David Ritz, who I think is one of those more successful ghostwriters, or they help the celebrity.
If they put his name on the book, he must be successful.
Yeah, well, I think that he's done a lot.
Because they're almost all ghostwritten.
I mean, it's hard to say. It's certainly a collaboration.
I'm reading Jimmy Buffett's A Pirate Looks at 50 right now, and it is clearly not ghostwritten.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, he wrote novels too, right?
Yeah, there were a couple of novels before that.
Yeah. Well, R.I.P. I'm not a super fan, but yeah. But speaking of R.I.P., I am a super fan of Prince, and so what Morris Day has done in this book is written it as if it's in dialogue with Prince, because they knew each other's, in high school, and then became, friends and rivals. And of course, Morris Day kind of steals the show in Purple Rain, which I think is a good movie, even if you like Prince's music or not.
A lot of people do.
It's got that boy meets girl struggle, kind of just a classic story,
right?
Really. And so what's so unique about it is he puts in Prince's voice, like it's still in his head, because they knew each other so well. And so he'll have Prince sassing him and pointing out like, oh, you'd be a nobody without me.
Nice.
Which is kind of probably true.
Right.
But what I liked about Morris Day in here, he says, I am not a workaholic. He'll do his job, he'll do his work, and but not live at 25 hours a day like Prince did. And here's another memoir that's, I keep using this term, uniquely written, because I've never read a book quite like this. House of Psychotic Women by Kayla Janice. And this is her autobiography told in film criticism. So she would write she'd write about the films that influenced her growing up in Canada. And she had kind of a troubled upbringing, nothing too tragic, but it's an autobiographical topography of female neurosis in horror and exploitation films.
Well, I'm going to add that to my TBR.
Yeah, and it's still in print. I'm pretty sure they might have a second edition out by now. So, and then I think this particular book of film criticism has inspired a lot of people to take a more personal approach to things. So, another memoir I read in the past couple of years was Lynette Frommy's Reflection. And it's very poetically written. I think it mentions the word murders in here twice. For those of you who don't know, she was Red in the Manson family. So while she never killed anybody, she did spend a long time in jail for the attempted assassination of President Ford, who nobody voted for. So this one is autographed. I have more than one copy of this and would be willing to sell this one. She's not seeking a lot of attention, so finding autographed copies is not easy.
Was she squeaky?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't use that term because that sounds like, well, I guess I do use it sometimes, but you know, that's kind of dismissive of her, when really what this book is about is environmentalism.
Huh.
And so she talks about meeting Charlie and all the girls and other people, and it's very much a Charles Manson apologist kind of book, which is rare. Because, you know, Charles Manson, he's not really guilty of all the stuff they piled on him, but also he deserved to be in prison his whole life because he just could not live in society.
See, I always think I read weird books, and then Forrest comes by and tells me what he's reading.
Yeah. So this one is not a memoir, but it's about a transition into a subject we're about to get into and taking a turn.
Things are fixing to get real, folks.
Yeah. So this one is Valus, or Valus, I don't know how you want to pronounce it, by Philip K. Dick, and this is the necrophile edition, where the family sold his autographed check stubs.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know, I didn't come up with that term, I can't remember who did, but that if you want to get an autographed Philip K. Dick book, this is kind of an easier way of doing it. One of 25 copies, though, bound in cloth. There were 26.
You should put like a price sticker on the front of it.
Well, this one I have priced at $1,500 because I could sell this one.
I'm joking about that. One of my local bookshops uses little stickers to cover up the prices over everything, and it drives me insane.
Well, they're not as bad as half-price books that will then take a permanent marker and block out the old price and then raise the price. So they're diminishing the condition and raising the price.
Right.
I do very little. I make very few purchases from half-price books.
Right. I never go to half-price books anymore.
So the reason I mention this as sort of a memoir is it's his most autobiographical book, and it has to do with receiving extraterrestrial transmissions in his brain. So to what extent that was real, we don't know, but he believed it and wrote like 10,000 pages of an autobiographical religious work called the Exegesis, which is hard to read. But Valus is great, and I recommend that. It's not, well, let me start over. It probably is his most difficult to read book because there's a lot of philosophical terms that throw people off, and it doesn't have really a traditional narrative. But it's great. Now we're making our turn here, and I'll show you the memoir that I'm reading now, called Dirty Little Secret by Aaron Montgomery. And this is
another great title.
Yeah, Confessions of an Alien Contactee. And that's she has had alien abduction experiences that she's recovered memories through hypnosis, which is kind of controversial because is it that she's led or suggested to come up with these ideas, but when the narratives of so many abductees kind of have a similar thing, it's probably something a lot more than just bad hypnosis. And now that here we are in Denton, Texas, this one took place here, Into the Fringe by Carla Turner, and this occurred in this area. True story of alien abduction. The great thing about this memoir is that she was a professor of English, so it's very well written.
Oh, okay.
Into the Fringe. I think it's in print, and it's interesting. I liked it. I read it. So that brings me to the next subject matter that I brought. So we're transitioning into books about UFO religions. whether you believe that UFOs and flying saucers are real or not, doesn't so much matter in the sense that they've influenced our culture to such an extent that there's all different kinds of religious interpretations of UFOs and aliens. Like I say, I think the jury is still out as to whether this stuff is real, but something's happening. I mean, UFOs are real, but we just don't know what they are. So I'm going to withhold judgment on whether they're really aliens from outer space, but I like thinking about that kind of stuff. And that's why...
There's certainly a large body of literature about it, because I can see the stack of books he's
yeah,
looking at over
this
there.
is just a fraction of what I've got.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go all the way back to 1715. The history of the 72 interpreters, but it's to which is added the history of the angels and their gallantry with the daughters of men. So as you may know, there's a lot of speculation that there's UFOs in the Bible. So we have things going back to the, in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, Ezekiel, the Jacob's Ladder, all these things. I'm not a Bible expert, but I do know that that there's plenty of people who find UFOs in the Bible. And here's one of them. Flying Saucers and the Scriptures.
Well, that's a classic cover.
Yeah.
What is this, from the 50s?
Yeah, I think it might be around 1964.
There you go. It's got that old-timey science fiction book feel.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of science fiction, there's very few fiction books that I brought. But here's one of them. I know you like juveniles.
Yeah.
Planet of Light by Raymond F. Jones. I'm going to put this up real close because that's a beautiful
gorgeous
flying
is that?
saucer.
Yeah.
Beaming it down to that person. And you don't usually see flying saucers on science fiction books. The plot may be about aliens and UFOs, but usually they won't put a UFO in the book because at the time they didn't want to get shunted in with the UFO craze of the 50s and 60s. So here's another one on the subject of UFOs and the Bible. I've not read it, but I do collect it. You want to see when this one was from. 1956, first edition.
Nice.
No illustrations. And I'll tell you about where I got
My
it
house
from.
smells like old books today now.
Yeah, especially
I
this
love
one.
that.
Here, get a whiff from 1715.
Wow.
Now, I did not make this binding. It's a rebound book.
It's beautiful.
I do like these colors, but I would have chosen to do something different with this from 1715.
One of these days, I'm going to show my copy of, was it Camilla?
Carmilla.
Carmilla.
Yeah.
That Forrest bound for me.
Yeah, please do.
It's bound in goatskin,
Yeah, in green.
in green. It's lovely.
So let's.
It was a
see.
gift. I think it was a birthday present.
Yeah, it
It's
sounds
my
about
precious.
right. I like to give away my bindings rather than to sell them. I mean, if I sell one, it's going to be for a lot, and if I give one away, then I'm also happy doing that. Here's Jesus Christ, heir to the astronauts.
Nice.
And I think this must be after Erich von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, which was made for a big flap. I don't have that here with me.
They have conventions for this kind of thing, don't they?
Yeah, and the ancient astronaut stuff
We should go.
feeds into it. I would go to a UFO convention.
We should go.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
And now here's one going back to ancient Japan called the 6,000-year-old spacesuit. And this person's thesis is that this ancient sculpture or statue is of an alien gray. You can see the eyes.
He looks like a slee stack
Yeah.
from the land of the lost.
It's called a Dogu statue from Japan. And so, this one is illustrated. So, like I said, there's all sorts of different interpretations, religious implications of UFOs and visitors. So we have here gods or spacemen. Yeah,
That is the question.
yeah, I don't know. Let's see here. Also, another religion that people don't consider a religion, but that's psychology. I think it was Carl Jung's last book was on the subject of flying saucers. And I consider psychology to be a religion because it helps people find comfort in their lives. And so it's a modern myth of things seen in the skies. That's the first American edition.
I did not know that Carl Jung had written a book about flying saucers.
Yeah. And let's see here. So now let's talk about more like actual UFO religions that were founded with UFOs as their premise. Obviously, the Bible is not that way, and psychology is not that way. But here we have the Council of the Seven Lights by Van Tassel, and he was an early contactee, so here, signed by the author, and would have people out to his ranch or place. I think it was in Joshua Tree, California, and he built this kind of, I don't know how you describe the Integratron. Is that even how it's pronounced?
I'm sure that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know how to describe it.
Well, it's kind of like, well, here's this. So,
I'm not really sure that's how it's pronounced.
yeah. But the point is that he started UFO conventions, and he founded his own kind of Ministry of Universal Wisdom Incorporated. Now, other people.
I love names of religions.
Yeah, let me throw.
Especially new ones.
Yeah, and here's another. I guess I'm skipping around a little bit, but here's God Drives a Flying Saucer.
Oh, there's a title.
Yeah, I haven't read this one either, but I'm sure that's coming off the heels of Chariots of the Gods. And then,
My mom loved these kinds of books too.
oh yeah, and then let's see here, just quickly, that you can go all sorts of directions with this kind of thing. Mercury, UFO messenger of the gods. So now this person's thesis is about the ancient god of wisdom. And look, it's off of a dot matrix.
I like the author's photograph on the back.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
I have a friend from high school.
Boris
who looks
Karloff
like
could
that.
play him in a movie. That'd be wonderful. Well, if Boris Karloff were alive.
Yeah. So let's see here. Then also people who consider Aleister Crowley to be a religion. Here's their interpretation: Secret Cipher of the UFO Knots. And it's about UFOs and the occult. Aleister Crowley, let's see if they show a picture of it here. One of the things he painted or drew was an alien. It looked like an alien probably in the 1900s. But I read this many, many years ago. I did not find it convincing, but I don't remember enough about it to say anything other than that. Another one I don't find convincing is by an author that I really like, Bob Larson. Here he wrote a book.
Great Bob Larson.
Yeah. And once again, like I said, I collect autographed books, so there's his autograph. And it's UFOs and the Alien Agenda. And so he says, Bob Larson says, that all aliens and UFOs are really just demons, because he's,
That's kind of his
Protestant
thing.
Christian.
Bob Larson is very concerned about demons.
Yeah, so concerned that he claims to have exorcised 10,000 people or something. And I've been to his.
That's a
rallies.
legacy.
Yeah, and
That's
I've
a
seen him
legacy.
do exorcisms, and it is a hoot
Oh,
to see. He's coming this month.
we need to go do that next time.
Yeah.
We got to add that to our bucket list along with the UFO
And
convention.
I had a lot of fun with Bob Larson over the years. His radio show in the 1990s, Talk Back with Bob Larson, was like the Christian radio equivalent of Howard Stern. And so I still love Bob Larson. Yeah.
That's marvelous.
So my interest in UFO religions really started in 1997 with the Heaven's Gate suicide cult. And there were some kind of cruddy books written about it. Here's one, a tabloid, Inside Heaven's Gate.
Oh, no one has a photo of me with that expression somewhere.
I'm
If
not
they do, they haven't shared it yet.
I'm not going to say that's the cruddy one, actually. This one's the cruddy one, the real just tabloid one. Heaven's Gate suicide, cult suicide in San Diego. And so this is all sensational. But my best friend and I wrote a book in 1997 called Cosmic Suicide, The Tragedy and Transcendence of Heaven's Gate. And it's still in print. Check out my eBay listings on Pentaradial, Pentaradial.
I'll include that in the description down below
Please
as
do.
well.
Yes, my username, my publishing company. And look, here's an autographed book. Rodney Perkins, Forrest Jackson.
Very nice.
Still in print, but going fast after all these years. So we wrote this for presentation at the Center for Study on New Religions, which was in Amsterdam that year when it was a big topic in 1997. The next year in Garland, Texas, a Taiwanese UFO cult, you want to hold that one up, moved to Garland saying that God was going to land a flying saucer in the cult leader's front yard. That's the Chinese language edition of, let me get up here.
Ooh, and here's some ephemera.
Yeah. The practical evidence and study of the world of God and Buddha, God's salvation. And that's what he called, they changed the name of the cult sometimes, but one thing that they would call it was God's Salvation Church, as if they were giving God salvation. So these people, everybody was afraid that they were going to do some kind of cult suicide, as Heaven's Gate had done. But these people, they wore all white, they were strict vegetarians, and over 100 of them moved from Taiwan to Garland. And I think that it was probably some sort of real estate scam may be too strong of a word, but God didn't land in a flying saucer. But I was there to see him confess that it didn't happen, the cult leader.
Right.
And he would speak through an interpreter. And one of the things he said before the failure of the prophecy was that if this does not come true, then he wanted to be stoned to death. And when he said that now is the time for people to stone him to death, these huge, strong Garland police officers moved in real close, and I shouted out among the journalists, I said, "Can we really throw rocks at him?" And the big bull cop said, "Yeah, but you better be a good aim." And I just sat down because I'm not good aim at baseball. So that was a lot of fun to do.
I don't mess with the cops in Garland.
Yeah. Well, I don't mess with cops at all.
Yeah, especially not in Garland.
Yeah. So this was on their doors. It said, "The kingdom of God is a holy place. Non-vegetarians are advised not to enter in avoidance of retribution." And I guess the statute of limitations is long past. I stole this off of one of their doors after the prophecy failed.
I'd be in big trouble. I like barbecue too much.
Yeah. Well, that was their main message, was vegetarianism.
Well,
when
there you
the
go.
UFOs didn't land. But they produced other books called, like, Gods Descending in Clouds, Flying Saucers on Earth to Save People. And then here's one of the last ones, The Appearing of God and Descending of the Kingdom of God, Saving Human Beings by Means of God's Space Aircrafts.
That's not the catchiest title
No,
we've seen today.
and he kind of changed them from UFOs to airplanes, if I recall correctly. But my friend Rodney and I, we wrote that Heaven's Gate book, so we were naturals for this UFO group in Garland, and we were published in the Fortean Times
Nice.
in 1998, and that was a brief article.
It was a very good year.
And then I was asked to write for the encyclopedic source book of UFO religions, which was more of a full chapter. April Fools, the saucers will not be landing. Now, when I wrote these and co-wrote these, I was a lot more skeptical about UFOs than I am now. I don't feel like being closed-minded is going to help figure out any of this, you know? So those are some of the UFO religions.
I remain skeptical.
Well, it seems very unreal, but if so many thousands, if not millions of people have seen UFOs over the course of human history, then there might be something to it. I just don't know.
I've been wrong before.
Yeah. So the most successful UFO religion is realism, which was founded by, I think, Claude Vorilhon in the early 70s when he had a contactee experience, if he did. Because he was somebody who was always looking for fame and fortune and le femme, which he got. So here's his first book in English called Space Aliens Took Me to Their Planet.
That's a good title.
The book which tells the truth. And just gonna do it again, gotta do it. It's inscribed to somebody named Guy. And the interesting thing about this one, if I can find it quickly, is that at one point he wrote the New Commandments. And I don't know if you can see that on the screen there, but he's pasted over, probably cult members, pasted over some of the New Commandments. And so he changed his mind after publication. At least he reduced the tithing from 10% to 1%. But I have taken photos of the original page from a different edition. Now, a word about the term cults, which academics find to be pejorative, but I think it's descriptive. It doesn't offend me, and I'm a amateur writer on these subjects. I'm not going for tenure, so I don't have to be politically correct about it. So I don't mean, when I say cult, I'm not saying that all cults are evil unless they do what, say, Massimo Intervini would call a criminal new religion. But that's, they're breaking laws that already exist. But if you say the term cult, some people think it's automatically something totally evil. And then Rael kind of straddles the line on some of that. So I did read this one and it was pretty good. And then he's written others, like The Final Message, the UFOs, the Truth Here at Last, and Sensual Meditation, because it's a sex cult as well as a UFO cult. So they're awesome.
It's like peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah. And so here's their magazine called Apocalypse. Now, he's really most widely known from about 21 or 22 years ago when they claimed that they'd cloned a human baby. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's from about this time. Apocalypse International. So he says that the aliens are going to come. So here's some other things. So these are kind of just like the cult's publications. And over time, he spent a lot less time talking about UFOs and more about meditation and world peace. But he does have thousands of followers. And here's UFO Land in Canada. But he gets himself in hot water to where he got kind of chased out of France. Then he got kind of chased out of Canada. And now he lives in Japan, where this book that has a controversial cover was published. Let's welcome our fathers from space. They created humanity in their laboratories. And it shows the Raelian symbol of a swastika interlocking with a Star of David. And while that doesn't offend me, I know it does offend a lot of people who have rightly pointed out that when you see a swastika, you don't think about ancient Tibetan symbols or UFO cults. People think about the Third Reich. And so, nobody's in favor of that. I think he did this to get attention.
Oh, yeah.
He claims it was on the side of the UFO that he took him into a voyage into outer space where he could meet all the prophets of antiquity. And he's known as the last prophet. Here he is with more hair.
That's very odd.
Yeah. So at one point, they changed the symbol. Let me see if I can find one here. Here's his beautiful wife. I don't know if they're still together, but whoa. And at one point, they changed the swastika to a swirl instead of swastika because they were trying to convince the Israeli government that they needed to buy land to build an embassy for the flying saucers to land. So they dropped the swastika for a while. Then when they realized there was no chance of that happening, they brought it back. Like I said, I think he did it to get attention, what my elementary school teachers would have called the wrong kind of attention.
Now there's a high concept for a movie. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a UFO cult trying to convince a government to build an embassy for the space aliens.
Yeah.
That I'd watch that movie.
I'd watch it in real time if it would just happen.
Right.
And so let's see. Let's close up with another UFO book called Gods of the New Millennium. And this one's inscribed to Cheyenne. And Cheyenne Turner was a person who put on speaking engagements through something called the Eclectic Viewpoint. And she passed away in 1998, I think. And I had the good fortune of going to her estate sale. And that's where I bought most of my vintage UFO books.
I knew an exotic dancer named Cheyenne.
Oh, that sounds like
But I don't think it was her real name.
Yeah, so she, my mother knew her kind of as an acquaintance. And she was in the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and I'm sure it's not for some squabbling personal reasons she split off and made her own thing. But a big shout out to whatever galaxy her soul is in now, because I'm very grateful to Cheyenne Turner, who put on all these speaking engagements in the 80s and 90s. I guess it was in the early 90s when she started up, the Eclectic Viewpoint. So I do have a few more UFO books, but I'm going to kind of stop right there and say that the 50th anniversary of the transmission of the first message to Rael is coming up in December, and the convention is in Japan. So that's pretty far.
We can celebrate here.
Yeah.
And zoom into Japan.
And unfortunately, we missed Go Topless Day, because Rael is very much in favor of the equality of the sexes, which to him means that we should allow women to walk around topless if they choose to. So
That makes sense to me.
I'm in favor of that, but I think that some people couldn't handle that. I mean, if there's controversy about breastfeeding in public, imagine what kind of controversy you'd have with UFO cultists topless in public. But I kind of like Rael. He has a very positive message, and the only thing I regret is that he doesn't talk hardly about UFOs anymore. But it's probably because he just made it all up based on Eric Von Daniken and supposedly a comic book that he read that had a scene where it had all the prophets like Moses and Muhammad and Jesus
Right.
at a round table in outer space
Huh.
that he went to visit, and they informed him, you're the final prophet. And with world events going the way they are,
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
so yeah.
I've seen things I didn't expect.
Well, and the only UFO that I can say that I've seen is the Marfa Lights in South Texas. And I'm not saying they're for aliens from outer space. I often say that it's due to a piezoelectric effect, but that's really just because I like to use big words like piezoelectric.
Yeah, you've noticed
I
he's
can't even
probably
spell.
thrown out a little bit of French during this.
Well, I can't.
I knew Forrest before he spoke French.
I don't speak French. I read French.
Yeah, but I knew you before then too.
Yeah, that's true. It's been
I remember when you started.
12 years ago.
Oh no, we've been friends for 15, 16 years.
Oh, man, I
I opened
can't
that
keep
bookstore
up.
in 2008.
Okay, that was the year I met you then.
Yeah,
Neat. Yeah, I saw his.
one of the first people that came into my store.
Yeah, I
Actually,
saw that in the Dallas Observer there was some mention of an opening, and I shut down my bookstore to drive out to Wiley. Is that where it was?
yes, Wiley, Texas,
To drive out to Wiley
Ballard Street.
because I had very little foot traffic in the Rosedale Rare Books.
I had very little foot traffic too, which is one of the reasons I no longer own a bookstore.
Yeah, but it was great while it lasted, and the book club there was so good.
Oh, that was so much fun.
That's what I missed.
We're planning a reunion.
Good.
So
I want to be there.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
All right, I want to know of you. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I'm going to encourage the people watching this video to leave comments with their thoughts about UFO religious cults and memoirs too in the comments field, and I'll make sure that Forrest sees them because I won't have answers to most of these questions.
I'm not saying I have answers. I do want to say this. I'm not much on social media. Like I said, I'm still on Goodreads, and you can find me as a friend through Randy there. And I generally accept friends. that I
Forrest
know.
Jackson.
Yeah, Forrest Jackson.
He's an analog man in the digital world.
Yeah, I have a wind-up wristwatch.
More so than I am, even.
Yeah, I'm not too crazy about computers. Of course, I use them.
You've
Yeah.
definitely stepped forward over the last 15 years, because 15 years ago, Forrest was pretty much a Luddite.
Well, I see myself about the same level. Really, it's that I've been screwed over by computers so many times with them crashing and losing data
Yeah.
that I gave up on them.
Oh, yeah.
That's my main complaint.
I just use them until they quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, every electronic device I've ever had, I've kept it until it just wouldn't turn on anymore. So,
All right. So, yeah, I guess just circling back to the very beginning, I'll recommend Data Baby by Susanna Breslin.
Data Baby, I'm going to read.
It's good.
Okay, well, this has been great. This is also my daughter's birthday, and I have twin daughters, so
birthday.
I'm
Happy
celebrating. Yes, Mary, one of my daughters, is going to come by to visit today. But anyway, I can't imagine a better way to celebrate 500 subscribers and my daughter's birthday than to have their Uncle Forrest come over.
I'm not their uncle.
No, and which they used to point out constantly. I'd say, "Hey, Uncle Forrest is here." He's not my uncle. All right, I want to thank Forrest for coming on and talking. I'm sure this has been way more interesting than anything I've done to date. And it's going to be 106, 107 degrees here today in Texas. So please, if you're watching from Texas, stay hydrated. In fact, stay hydrated no matter where you're watching from. I'll be back with a new video soon.
All right. Cheerios.